Not all victims and survivors of sexual assault and rape can talk about their abuse, nor should they be forced to disclose. We, however, have chosen to speak out in order to break the isolation and silence that surrounds this crime. We are Silent No More.
Welcome to Silent No More. Today our guest is here to tell a story about events that have affected him to this day. They are events of sexual abuse that he has survived, that he has lived through, and that he has decided to come and talk to us about it today. Our efforts will, in our belief, hopefully put an end to sexual abuse. I'd like to welcome Brad today and say that I want you to know that I think you're very courageous. I know you're very courageous for doing something like this, in speaking out and confronting the offender or an offender that has affected your life. What would you like to say to us today, Brad?
Good morning, Lucia. I'd like to say I'm really grateful to be here today, to have an opportunity to speak out in such a public forum. I believe that it's my duty to come forward because I am strong enough to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, and I hope that that other people are able to find the strength to come forward and tell their story too, because I think it's very important, and I think it will go a long way towards helping others to help mm-hmm. themselves. So I guess the place to start is at the beginning.
Yeah.
I am right now I'm 37 years old, and to this day I'm affected by the events of my childhood, mm-hmm. for sure. There's no doubt about it. With the benefit of some of the work that I've been able to do and some of the programs that are available, I've come a long way from where I was. Mm-hmm. But it's been a struggle, that's for sure. When I was learning how to read Dr. Seuss books and learning how to tell time, which as best I can figure is probably around first or second grade.
That's about 5 or 6?
Yes. Yeah. Something like that. Where I lived, my particular situation was we lived in a 2-family house, and my perpetrator lived upstairs. Mm-hmm. He was a family member who my mother, from my father's side, and he had been known all his life. And he moved into our house when I was about in kindergarten, I think, upstairs. And subsequently, I was encouraged to go upstairs. This individual was, I guess when he moved in, he was probably in his 30s, and he had a white collar job, and he was had some money. He certainly wasn't rich or anything like mm-hmm. that, but it was a different environment than when I lived downstairs. Downstairs in my house, there was 3 children, and my mother and my father, and it was just a little more chaotic, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And this other person was looked to as I guess a mentor, or you know, somebody who I was encouraged to look up to, and who would it would seem help me out along the way. Mm-hmm. My father died when I was in 4th grade, and at that point, I was really strongly encouraged to go upstairs. It was just a much different environment.
Can you explain that a little? Encouraged to go upstairs?
We lived in a 2-family house, and mm-hmm. my perpetrator lived upstairs.
Yeah.
So my mother had no idea what was going on. Mm. So she said, go up to Billy's. A lot of the other kids hung around up there. It was a sort of a freer environment. I don't know how to put it. More like there was always we always watched the news, mm-hmm. and there was always some kind of music playing, and it was like more cultural or something along that.
Appealing to a kid.
Certainly. And my mother had the idea that this individual was a good person, mm-hmm. and helping me out, and helping the other kids in the neighborhood out. Mm-hmm. I have a brother who's older mm-hmm. than me. Much older, actually, and he had hung around with this guy also because mm-hmm. He was a little older, and he was apparently a good person to hang around with. Mm-hmm. And So I was definitely encouraged to go upstairs, to go see Bill. So he also was a person who basically used to read to me all the time, and who I learned how to read from. There was another guy there, Al, a boy at the time he was a boy just a little older than me. He taught me how to tell time. And so I learned some of these things that one might learn from a parent, from these individuals. I also have to tell you that my mother was a single mother, so she was like out a lot and working a lot. And I had two sisters, and it was just different. It was easier to go upstairs and just be part of that environment. So while I remember distinctly reading The Cat in the Hat, and telling, are we supposed to be graphic here? Is that the idea? We're supposed to just do whatever it is comes up. Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember reading The Cat in the Hat, and on this particular time, some of the words I couldn't get. All the time, this person used to make me like sound them out with phonics, you know? And then all of a sudden, like he was just telling me the words, and it was interesting. And I remember saying, "You're weird today. You're acting weird tonight." And then Bill started like caressing me, rubbing my stomach and everything, and not everything. He started rubbing my stomach and caressing me, like slowly. And it was the same kind of thing like your mother does, you know what I mean? Like a loving kind of a gesture, and it didn't really seem that out of hand, you know. But it went on and on and on, and I remember being excited, you know, sexually excited as a result of that. And then he reached down into my private parts and touched my penis, you know, and I got like all worked up, you know. I was like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, it was an accident. It was an accident." And I remember that was the first time that ever happened. And it's funny because whenever not all the time, but every once in a while, like when I see The Cat in the Hat or anything like that, you know, like sometimes I get worked up in more of a degree than others. In fact, to go up to the present, during this year's Super Bowl, a friend of mine had one of those hats, one of those Cat in the Hat hats, and it was interesting how I really wanted it, but I didn't. You know what I mean? It was and I knew what was going on, and it really wasn't the environment to start bringing up what was going on with me. You know? So I just took it and put it on my head and forgot about it. But so that was that time, and I remember going downstairs and to get back to my childhood. And I remember going downstairs, and at that time my father was still alive, and I remember like being like kind of confused as to what was going on, you know. And the environment in my house downstairs it wasn't violent, but it was not, to the best of my knowledge, it was not what I would call functional or stable. It did not seem the thing to do to go downstairs and say, "Billy just touched me." In fact, nobody had ever warned me or told me or anything about anything like that, you know. So I really didn't know what was going on. And I was like kind of excited and afraid, and I didn't know what was up, and it was just kind of mayhem in my house when I was a little kid. So I didn't say anything at all. And there was a little confusing messages in terms of, you know, like you should be up there, it should be good, and you know, as a child that age, I didn't know what was or wasn't normal. So it's just like, I guess this is how it is, you know. So a while after that, and I'm not quite sure in the time frame how long it was, because, you know, I was up there being upstairs, and I really couldn't tell you how much longer it was until there was any kind of sexual activity tried again. I don't remember. I believe it was after my father died, and he died when I was in 4th grade. I remember also that Monday Night Football was just coming around then, and I think that's been like around for like 25 years or maybe 30 years. I'm not sure how long that's been around, but I do distinctly remember that being around too, because my mother had a boyfriend, and he moved into our house. And I remember at times watching Monday Night Football with my mother's boyfriend and his son-in-law and some other people, and being like with men, you know, and it was like very obviously through, with what you might call the typical men, drinking beer and hollering at the television on Sundays and stuff. And it was just like such a different environment being upstairs, because there wasn't that kind of behavior in terms of like, he never watched football to begin with, but it was just totally different in terms of the environment. And I don't know how else to describe it. But after a while, there was and at that point too, somewhere after my father died, there's an extra bedroom upstairs. So I got my own bedroom, being I was the only boy. My two sisters had a room. I'm in the downstairs apartment, and the situation was such that it appeared to my mother to be safe and sane and everything. So like I got my own room, and that was really something special. And shortly after that, my cousin Bill used to come into my room all the time and caress me and more and more. And I really don't know how old I was, but it was probably 5th and 6th grade, I would say. And by then it just seemed like totally normal, and I had no idea that it wasn't normal. And I had no idea that anything was wrong, and there wasn't any real violence, or I wasn't being forced into anything or anything like that I could see. I mean, I certainly was being coerced, and I was being manipulated, but I wasn't flat out being forced into, you have to do this or do that, or physically.
It wasn't violent.
Right.
It wasn't violent.
That's correct.
The coercion was there.
Yeah, very slowly and very subtly, very seductively done so. Very, very seductively. And
how old was Bill?
he was in his 30s. He had to be in his 30s or his 40s, I would say. I would say probably in his 30s at that time. He had been married and divorced. And at that time, there was this other woman who would come around. A lot of people used to congregate there at this house, too. I need to make that very clear. This was what appeared to be a very safe, fun, sane environment, for young people. And, a lot of things were encouraged. And like on the surface, it was a really nice place to be. But some of the things that were in the undercurrent were really pretty crummy. So there was a lot of caressing and a lot of touching and everything, and then finally he started doing oral sex on me. And I remember distinctly it was before puberty, definitely. And very early on in that, I remember him saying, if your mother ever finds out what's going on, we are going to be in big trouble. That was emphasized. Definitely it's going to be us. This is our thing, and we are going to be in trouble.
Implying that you were somewhat at fault.
Oh, yeah. That's the message I got. And and the message I got was that I would be in trouble, and that I needed to protect this person and this thing at all costs. And so that went on for quite a number of years, actually. And the part that I need to say, too, is that at that age, I really didn't know what was going on. And there was no violence or anything. I have to tell you that, and I remember reading this in a book, a survivor's book somewhere, that I felt betrayed by my own body, because it this thing seemed wrong, but it felt good, yeah.
Physiologically.
Yeah. It was very...
touch feels good. Human touch. We all love that.
Yeah, very much so.
And so it's a confusing message.
Yeah, and it was very confusing.
Yeah.
Very confusing. And I remember never quite knowing, when my mother would caress me and hug me or whatever, it was the same thing, and I'm wondering, is she going to do this to me too, or what's going on? So it was very confusing, to say the least. And it was at that time, and I really want to make this clear. I mean, I don't know how this thing is going to be edited, but that was one of the most difficult things in my particular case. I don't know, had it been more violent or had it been some other way, maybe I would have had spoken up, But I was definitely seduced. I mean, there's no other way for me to say it as an adult now knowing what happened. I was seduced. And that was, to jump ahead a little, that makes things very difficult for me now. You know what I mean? Because when I get into situations that are seductive or it feels like I'm seducing somebody or somebody's trying to seduce me, even my current lover, sometimes I literally get stomach sick. And I'm really grateful now that I have an understanding of what's going on and I'm able to just say, we need to stop here for a minute, It
was a very confusing message you received.
Yeah.
Very confusing message.
Definitely. And very hard to didn't make any sense of. So that was, so I guess that brings us up to about maybe like, say 10 or 11 years old or something like that. At that time, there was some other boys around, and I would have to say with a fair degree of certainty that they were involved also at that time. There was a situation where my cousin, I'm not sure how to put it, was using me for sex, and one of the other kids from our neighborhood came to the house, and he came running up the stairs, and I remember there was a party going on up the street, and he wanted to grab some cherry bombs that we had and throw them out in the snow. And so where I live is pretty much an open, my neighborhood is safe and all that, so it's like open, everybody has their doors open and all that. So he came like, we heard him coming, pounding in up the stairs, comes running into the bedroom, opens up the drawer, grabs the cherry bombs, you know, what's going on? You know, like nothing was like said, like we're sitting there with no clothes on, and you know, it's like, yeah, and he leaves. And then later on, Bill said, yeah, he knows the code, you know, don't say anything to anybody. And at that point, that really started a major separation between my family and myself. Then that was the really the beginning of it, as far as I could see. My perpetrator made it very clear that my older brother was really not much of a man or an individual, and you know, he was a drunk and this and that. My mother was no good, and she had an affair, and her boyfriend was, you know, he just made it clear, like very slowly and again, very subtly and everything, that my whole family were like, you know, they should be looked upon with disdain, and not really, they weren't really worth much as human beings. And so that was difficult, because then I didn't have any family. So when I was like maybe like 12 or 13 now at this point, I feel like I didn't have any family.
Yeah.
And yeah, very much so. Very much isolated, very alone.
At a very young age.
Yeah. And no sense of anybody's reality but my perpetrators. And there was he had a lot of fear. He's a very fearful individual. I believe, in my heart, I believe this person's really a coward. You know, and there's a lot of bravado and you know, looking down on other people and all that kind of thing to mask a lot of fear instead of facing up to whatever it was that went on with him. The sexual assault, you know, continued like often too. This is pretty much a almost daily basis. This went on, and always just oral sex on me. Never anything that I was ever forced into or anything like that. And where I live also, there's we live on the beach, so a lot of people would be down in the summer. So when I was about 14, 15, we started discovering the difference between boys and girls, and it was a lot of fun, you know. And it was, I guess it was. However, a lot of the parents just took a whole hands-off attitude, because by that time too, we were all drinking, and we had gotten into smoking pot to some degree, and all that. And
At 13?
yeah,
14?
actually, we could go into that a little later, but I started smoking pot when I was 10, and that just made things a whole lot easier at the time. You know, it appeared to be a survival mechanism. You know what I mean? And then drinking and all that just got out
Sort
of
of an
hand.
escape?
Wow, very much so. Yeah.
Escape from reality for you.
Yes, definitely. So as we were learning, I say we, the other kids in my neighborhood were learning about each other and sex and stuff. That was a very difficult time, because I had also gotten the idea that sex was dirty and kind of sleazy and needed to be done like in a dark room, behind locked doors. Because after that kid came in, then all of a sudden all the doors got locked every night, you know, and under the excuse that there's a couple other kids were kind of wild in our neighborhood, but they were not any source of trouble by any means. You know what I mean? They were very, by my neighborhood standards, they were wild. Yeah, so it was, you know, we need to lock the doors in case so and so comes over, or this one and that. And then they never came over, and they never had any reason to. But that was what it was stated as. So I had gotten the message that sex was no good and dirty, and it had to be done behind locked doors and in the dark and all that stuff. And so now when we were in a situation where all the kids were together, they were in my neighborhood, and you know, boys and girls were kissing each other and holding hands and stuff. Like, I just retreated so badly, and that's when we were all drinking. And so I would just drink more and more, because I really didn't know how to react to that. You know, I didn't know how to deal with it. I had no idea. You know, I wanted to scream out, "Don't you guys know this is terrible and wrong and all that stuff?" And it wasn't. You know, there were kids learning what was going on, and I ultimately went from being like really afraid to like, you guys don't even have any idea what you're doing, and you know, like, so I went from like, I guess, fear to anger, or being afraid to like feeling like way better than them, because I had, in my mind, had all this experience or something like that. And that was a very difficult time. And that particular part of my life really lasted all the way through until the year after I got out of high school. I was able to talk, or able to actually like go out with girls, go out with in the sense of like dating and, you know, going to the movies and be alone and be able to converse and not be like very nervous and everything. Be very nervous, be unable to communicate, be unable to be intimate in a sense of like touching and talking, or being able to you know, participate in activity. Like, if I would meet girls and they would like me and I would like them, and then we would go out a few times, and then if we had any kind of sexual contact at all, I started shutting down, and the more sexual contact we had, the more I would shut down, and then finally it just, I wasn't anything like the person they met, that's for sure, at all. Because I'm pretty outgoing, and I like to have fun and witty and that type of thing, and then we'd be in a situation where it would be like, this should be like the most fun you're having, and I'm like, they were like with nobody, you know, at all. It was very difficult. Very difficult.
Difficult for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds like you went into yourself. Totally.
Yeah, like I was all alone.
Yeah.
You know, with another person.
Protecting yourself.
Yeah, and it was very difficult for each one of those women too, because they had, like, I didn't tell them what was going on. I had no idea what. I didn't really know what was going on, to tell you the truth. I didn't know how to tell them, and you know, they didn't have any idea. And I think a lot of hurt and pain was caused because they would take it on themselves, like they were doing something wrong, or maybe they weren't enough, you know, that kind of thing. And since then, by the grace of God, I've gotten to go back to most of the women that I dated and tell them what happened to me and what was going on, and you know, if they had any feelings or anything like that, that, you know, whatever was going on, it was mine. You know, they didn't really have to worry about that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I was really grateful to have done that.
Great that you did that.
Yeah. Well, that's what they all said.
Too.
Yeah, it was, because it made things a lot clearer. It made it a lot clearer for them that, you know, what was going on. Definitely. And it just made my life a lot simpler too. Like, once I found out what was going on and I was able to speak up.
When did that happen?
Since I was 30. Like 31, actually. So over like the last 7 years. Well, about like every time I see them, because sometimes it's not, some of these women are married and they have children and stuff, and it's not like the thing to do, just go knocking on their door and say, oh yeah, remember, you know. So it's whenever the time appeared to be right, you know what I mean, I was able to do that.
Yeah.
I was really grateful for that, to be able to do that, for sure.
That's incredible that you did that. I don't know that many people would do something like that.
Well, maybe not.
Brave.
Well, thanks. But I felt that it was really something that I really needed to do, because it was, it weighed a lot on my mind. And it was very confusing, because I would just kind of like abandon these people, these women, you know what I mean? I didn't like say I don't want to go out anymore, or I don't, anything like that. I was just like, I just stopped calling them up, and just wouldn't respond if they called and that type of thing. So it's just really difficult. Really difficult. Some of the other boys in my neighborhood were definitely being sexually assaulted by this time. I knew it. There were certain signs, like where I lived in my house, some of the other boys used to sleep over too. So I had my own room, and when they used to sleep over, they used to sleep in Bill's room. And sometimes, like only the one door would be locked, you know, into his room. It wouldn't be a whole house doors locked; just his room door would be locked. And then there was, like the door would get locked, and then about 20 minutes later, you know, he'd get up and brush his teeth and drink some water. And it was very clear what was going on, you know. And at that point, it was really very difficult because I had no idea how to talk to these guys. You know what I mean? And it seemed like somebody should say something, but nobody said anything. You know, and that was when we were probably 15, 16, definitely into high school by then. I had driver's license and everything. And once I started dating women, the sexual experience with Bill became a little more pushy, a little more violent. He forced himself onto me a few times in terms of sodomy, and then he started trying to kiss me. And that was like by then I was about 16 or 17 or 18, I'm not sure, in there. And I had been going out dating women for a while at that point, and then it just got to be like fucking disgusting at that point, you know what I mean? It was really, really something that was really bad. And at that point, I believe that somewhere along the lines, I said, this has got to stop. This has got to stop. To my own self. And I remember being with actually, the first woman who I dated for any significant length of time, I was half a year out of high school. And we were in my bedroom one night, and we were having sex. We were in my bed, and we were doing whatever it was we were doing. And I heard my cousin get up, and he opened the door into my bedroom. And you know, I was laying there with a woman, and he didn't say anything. He looked just like shocked, you know. And shortly after that, he came into my room. Shortly being like days later, or whatever, he came into my room, and it was just he didn't do anything. You know, he left, and that was basically the end of the incest experience. But that lasted for like a long time, and it had a profound effect on my life. There was, and that was the thing with my thing too, is that when I hear the word sexual assault, you know what I mean? Like I have images in my head conjured up of being, you know, held against one's will, or rape, or knife point, or, you know, if you know, threatening and all that. And there was never any of that. Because along the way, I had heard the terms, you know, sexual assault and sexual violence and that kind of thing, and it never occurred to me.
It didn't fit.
Yeah, it didn't fit. Not by any stretch of the imagination. It did not fit. So that was pretty much that, as far as the sexual part, I guess. It wasn't, and that was pretty much it. I mean, it was mostly oral sex, and then just a couple times, like I said, with sodomy, and then like the kissing in the end, and that was really it. And I guess I need to make that clear, because I don't know who's going to end up seeing this or watching it, but if it happens once, or if somebody touches you in a manner that you don't like one time, that's enough. You know, that's more than enough, in my opinion, to hurt a person in a really bad way. And it doesn't have to, like, I mean, it could feel good, you know, but it's just confusing and hurtful.
It feels good to the touch, but inside, you knew in your gut.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, there was something wrong.
This picture isn't quite right.
Yeah.
But the confusion there, the mixed message.
That's correct. Really, and it was really difficult, because I didn't have any idea of what was, you know, where to go or what to do or anything, so this is hard. So one of the things that I started doing, when I was 10, I smoked pot with one of my other cousins. And that was very much easy to, like, we smoked that pot, and then I felt very much out of my body. And I didn't have to do anything to get that way, because I had done that a lot when I was a kid and didn't really know it. I guess they call that disassociation or something like that, And I had done that a lot, but that takes a lot of energy. But if you smoke pot, that's it.
It's easy.
Like my head always felt like over here.
Euphoric, happy.
Yeah.
No problems.
Yeah. So we did that one time when I was 10, and then where I lived, it was very difficult to get a hold of. But when I was 11, then some of the other kids were a little older, and they were able to get it, and we would do that, and smoke pot, and then we would drink, and all those things made life much easier to cope with. They were survival techniques, and they lasted till I was 30. And what happened was I started to use those substances, and then it got very difficult, because then that became a problem in itself. If I didn't have it, then I had my life was to get some more. And I'm really grateful for me that it was just about pot and mostly marijuana and alcohol. But it was definitely a problem. And I had no interest or idea or anything in even looking that it might be a problem, because everybody else did it, and it was fun, and that's how, like, my whole household was like that. My mother and all her friends, and Bill and everybody upstairs. I mean, the thing about getting older was you get to drink, and you get to smoke cigarettes. I mean, that's what I thought adulthood was, you get to do that stuff. So there was quite a number of years of doing that, and I had no idea that it was a problem. I wasn't like an in the gutter drinker, or I wasn't like, I smoked pot, and I always said, well, if you smoke pot, you're going to do this, then you're going to do that. Pretty soon you're going to use heroin. Well, I never had any interest in using heroin, and I never had any interest in doing any of that other kind of thing. All I was interested in was just being a little numb. Like, take the edge off was one of my favorite things. Get the edge off, and so I spent a lot of time and energy using drugs, that's for sure. And a lot of people around me were hurt as a result of that, because I didn't tell anybody what I was feeling. I didn't tell anybody what I thought. I just kind of got numb. And I also didn't use, like, a lot every day. And that was another thing for me that was important, because I always heard, like, if you're a drug addict, you're an alcoholic, like, you're drinking a quart a day, or you're smoking pot and every day and all that stuff, and that wasn't really the deal for me. For me, if I had, like, a couple beers, or if I had, like, even with the pot, like, even if I just had it, I didn't actually have to be smoking it, I just had to have it, and I was fine. You know what I mean? And I certainly would use it, but often, but it wasn't like as soon as I wake up I gotta have it, or any of that kind of thing. And that really threw me too, And it wasn't until, like, really pretty recently, like within the last 4 or 5 years of my life, that I realized that you don't have to be doing it every day. For me, my opinion is, if I'm leaning on it, then I have a problem with it. If I'm using this to get through life on a day-to-day basis, then that's a problem. And I learned to do that when I was 11. You know what I mean?
Technique.
Right. And I would read too. And I still haven't being able to get back into reading. But I would read all the time, because if I was reading, then I wouldn't have to deal with reality. If you read a book, you can go anywhere you want and be all over the world. You can be anybody, you can do anything, you can see everything. So I read a lot too, which helped a lot, on one hand. And then on the other hand, it was, it was pretty just another way to hide.
Yeah.
And really, to this day, I have a difficult time reading, because, like, I realize, like, what I was doing, and I start reading, and I'm really enjoying it, and then I go, what am I trying to hide, or, what I mean? So I believe that those are ways that being sexually assaulted affected me, because I had to develop survival techniques, and now they affect me today, definitely. Inability to speak up, I don't even know why I got that. I really don't. But I know that I have an incredibly difficult time speaking up, stating my opinion, or stating my opinion. I'm just learning how, like, what feelings are and emotions and that kind of thing, and how to distinguish the difference and all that. And I'm just learning that it's a good thing to do to speak up, you know, and let people know how I feel. I don't have to be like screaming or be a maniac or anything like that, but people need to know what I think and how I feel, because I do have an impact in life.
And you have a right.
Yeah, right.
You have a
Definitely.
personal right in this
Yeah.
world to speak up and have your own opinion.
Right.
Everybody has that right.
Yeah, thank you. And in this
You have that
particular
right.
case, I think a responsibility, you know, to be sitting here with you in front of these cameras,
That's
you
incredible.
know, to speak up.
If there was a young kid watching this show, what would be, who was possibly experiencing the same things that you explained that you experienced in your life, what would be the message that you would want that young kid to know?
Well, first and foremost, that there's places that you can go to speak out, definitely.
And that you should speak out.
Well, I believe that you should, yeah. You might, I don't know. There's an issue of safety involved there, and they should definitely find somebody who's safe and speak out. And they should know that they don't have to put up with whatever it is that's going on, because there are people out there that can help, and also that they're not responsible. Because I think that, based on my experience from people I've talked to and everything, perpetrators have a way of making people feel responsible. You know, in fact, I haven't met anybody and had this type of conversation with them that didn't feel that they were responsible. Whether they be like a knockdown rape victim of a stranger, or you know, anywhere in between. But every single one of us always felt that we were responsible in some way, shape, or form. I must have done this. I should have done that. All that kind of thing, and that's not the case. Somebody else violated me, and somebody else is violating whoever may be watching this, and they have the right to speak up, and they have a responsibility to their own selves, you know, to speak up, because nobody can help you if you don't tell anybody.
That's right.
You know, that's the other thing too. It might seem like people should know. In my case, I'm like, doesn't anybody have any idea what the fuck is going on around here?
Yeah, right. Why don't they know?
Yeah, and that was another reason why I got so mad at my family. You know, like,
Sure.
they gotta know. You know, why isn't anybody protecting me? You know, and well, they didn't know.
Yeah.
They didn't, and that's the truth. They did not know, and they couldn't protect me. You know what I mean? One of the things also that for me was when I was learning how to go to work. I started working when I was like 13. Like that, the end of the 8th grade summer, I worked for a landscaper, and then when I was 14, I started working for him too. And that was another means of escape. Because if I went and did that, then I somehow or another I felt like I was escaping also. And I did that forever too, you know, all the way up until very recently. You know, like I was known as a good hard worker, you know, because I worked like so I didn't have to go home.
Yeah. If you were working, you weren't being abused.
Right. I didn't have to feel, you know, I could think that I was, you know, worth something and that kind of thing. And I used a lot of different methods to hide, you know, from myself and from those around me, and that's for sure. That is for sure. And when I was able to, I confronted my abuser. And that was with the help of a very dear friend of mine. And she had said, once I told her what happened, her position was such that she was obligated for a variety of reasons to confront the individual, my perpetrator, Bill. And she felt that there were other people involved, that there may have been other boys involved at that time. And that was when I was 31. And one of the things that I felt at that time, and actually all the way up through probably since I was about maybe 14, was that I should be speaking up, but I couldn't, and I had no voice. And that created a cycle also inside of me of being like, I should be speaking up, and I didn't, and that therefore I'm a bad person, and I'm, you know, all these terrible things that I did to beat myself up, you know. And so when I was 31, I told this woman, and about 2 months later, she contacted me and said that she felt that she was obligated to speak up in such a manner and talk to these other folks, Al and Pat, about their son, and there were some other people in our neighborhood who were younger at that time, and she felt that she needed to go to them and talk to them, and she would do it either with me, if that's what I would like to do, or without me, if that's what I needed to do also. But she was indeed going to do it, one way or the other. And I remember the first thing I wrote in my journal was like, you know, Maggie thinks that I'm supposed to protect the whole world from Bill, and to hell with her and all that stuff, you know. Because I was afraid.
Sure.
And at that time, I didn't really have any idea what fear was. You know, I didn't know what fear or anger or anything was. I just didn't have any idea. Like, I had no idea what emotions were. And so I just went off on a tangent about, you know, she was this, that, and the other thing. And a couple days later, it just felt like it was the thing to do, to go with her and do it. And we went to see Al and Pat, and I think we talked about that a little before. That, you know, I was really afraid of what was going to happen there. I had myself convinced that they were going to, you know, one of them was going to fall apart, and the other one was like literally going to get a gun and go hunting for the guy. And that wasn't the case at all. And they were, the word that they used, like everybody else that I talked to about my perpetrator, was shocked but not surprised. And, you know, which is a mixed bag, because, like, well, why didn't you say something like 15 years ago?
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, that's how it is. You know, people are afraid. They don't want to know. I guess, you know, that's been talked about before, too. You know, they don't want to know that their judgment is flawed. They don't want to look into that dark closet. Even now, you know, today, with all we know about sexual violence and sexual assault, it still goes on, and it's still hushed in the closet, you know, and you know, maybe, and for my own self, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm really grateful that I have the, I guess, courage that it takes to come up here and talk about this. But, you know, if the numbers of people who are affected by this, you know, with the amount of people just in New Haven that are affected by this, I mean, the line should be going down the road for people to come in here and sit in this chair, and that, well, you know, it's not the case today. And maybe, you know, hopefully that it will be.
Hopefully tomorrow.
You know, yeah, in the not too distant future, because it's a crummy thing, and you know, everybody needs help. You know, the victims, the families, anybody around the victims, the perpetrators. You know, I don't. Everybody needs help, and the only way to start is by opening up the subject and talking about it.
That's right.
You know, and it makes it a lot lighter burden to bear for everybody as soon as you start talking about it. And there's responsibility. People need to take responsibility for their actions, and maybe there's punishment that needs to be doled out, and maybe there's help and rehabilitation. I'm not sure what, but I know for sure that the first thing we need to do is start talking about it. You know,
right.
realistically as a society. So after I directly, so that day we being me and Maggie, went to see Al and Pat. We talked to another person, and we went to talk to my perpetrator. And my friend was in a position to offer my perpetrator help, real, honest-to-God help, that she could definitely provide. And it seemed like he was going to do it, you know. And you know, he said, you know, he talked to her at length, and I had no interest in even looking at the guy. But he talked to her at length and thought, you know, maybe he was. You know, maybe he was gay, or, you know, he wasn't sure what was going on. And that lasted for about a week. And then that was in September when that started. And then around Thanksgiving, we had dinner, because, family dinner thing. And I couldn't eat. And it was really nice because, well, the fact that I couldn't eat wasn't nice, but that I could see what was going on. Finally, at these family deals, like, I would just evaporate during holidays, There's supposed to be all this great thing going on, and I'm like, I can't even be here. And I was looking around at my family, and each one of them in a much different light. And, I still literally was sick to my stomach and ate a little bit, and basically, I hung out, though. I remember making it a point at that time to hang out, at the table and make the small talk and just be there. Just literally just be there. And then it appeared that, things, I thought I had not had any contact with my perpetrator at that point, which is really odd because he lived in the same house that I did, but I just didn't have any contact with him. Then Christmas came, and I remember coming into my kitchen, and he was talking to my youngest sister about how many messed up people there were in Brantford, and they ought to do this, that, and the other thing. And I don't remember the gist of the conversation, but I remember him saying that. And in fact, he said, how many fucked up people live in Brantford? And I came in and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and that's, in my mind, that's when the whole thing changed, That's when it was very clear to me who had the power and who didn't. And shortly thereafter, he had a stomach ache, and he couldn't stick around for dinner.
You got the power.
Yeah.
You got power.
Definitely.
You got control.
Yep. And I got it because I was honest with myself.
That's right.
And that's like such a key thing for everybody involved in this, If a person is a victim or a survivor, they're in charge. It's not the perpetrator. It's the person who had the crime committed against them. And whatever anybody tries to tell you, or however way it ever goes, even in my case, it would be, however, if it goes to court or it doesn't, or if it's proven by a law or anything, once you look at your perpetrator in the eye and tell them what they did to you, then you have the power. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that. And for me, that's enough. And I wish I could do more, but legally, my time is up because of my age and all that stuff, but that's fine.
Brad, you have done a lot. You have done a lot. You have done a lot by being here today, by speaking out, by encouraging anybody who is being abused to speak out and to be here and to get the help that they need and take the power and the control back.
I'd like to say that I'm really grateful for the opportunity to come out here today. I believe that it was a courageous act on my part, but a lot of people came before me. And if the work that Lucia is doing by starting this program off, or the folks behind the cameras and the people that you can't see here are also part of this project. And the most thing I got out of doing this and out of standing up was self-esteem. If what I got back by standing up to my perpetrator and looking at my past and the things that I've done is that now I get to look in the mirror and see a man and see a person in there who I never thought much of and never made much of an effort to take care of or do anything for. And as a result of being able to speak out, I've gotten all that back, and I think for me that's the biggest payoff, and that's the most important thing. I'm a human being, and I have worth, and I also learned that I have impact. Sometimes I have a bigger impact than others, but I lost myself totally as a result of my sexual assault, and I don't know of any other way to get myself back, or for anybody else to get themselves back, but by turning around and facing it instead of trying to run from it. So I really encourage anybody who's out there watching to do yourself a favor and stop running and take a look at what you're doing. Thanks for being here.